Gentlemen, welcome to the meeting of the North Penn School District Board of School Directors, May 2nd, 1995. This meeting is to review the proposed preliminary budget for the 95-96 fiscal year. This meeting is being videotaped for community cable channels. Individuals attending this meeting and intending to speak to the board should be aware that they are being videotaped. In order to meet the requirements of Pennsylvania Sunshine Law, it is necessary to record the names of all citizens who speak to the board during the meeting. To assure compliance with this requirement, it is essential that those planning to address the board come to the microphone and state their name and address. Members of the audience are asked to limit their questions and comments to no more than, I'm changing it to 5 minutes. This limit will permit time for all of those who wish to speak to the board to do so. Whenever members of the audience exceed this time limit, the board president, and that is President Pro Tem this evening, may ask the individual to yield the microphone to the next speaker. But I will also give you the opportunity to come back around after the line has gone through one time and to speak again if you wish. This is a reference to Board Policy 8344.2. This meeting is scheduled to conclude at 10 o'clock, and we will hold fast to that 10 o'clock time. Dr. President, are you aware of any executive session need for tonight?
Yes, there'll be a need. We have a personnel matter that we wish to discuss with the board. So at the conclusion at 10 o'clock, we'd like to meet with you if we may.
Okay, and that report is a matter of record, and I would affirm that. Also, at this time, may I ask everybody in the audience and the members of the board to please take an opportunity. This is the first time we've had to meet formally and to express respect and prayer and sorrow for the loss of a very important teacher in our district, Howard Lassen. So if you would, a moment of silence would be much appreciated. Amen, and thank you. Okay, Dr. Persing, if you would.
As we had proceeded last time, what we'd like to do is to present to you the various phases of the budget, starting with the personnel secretary aides with Mr. Fred Schmidt, who has not relinquished his title of dean in the state of Pennsylvania, still fighting their fighting. And then at the conclusion of each one of the presentations, if you'd like, we could open up for questions. If you'd like, we'd go to the end, whichever is the pleasure of the body.
Hey, thank you. As I was saying the other evening, what I'd like to be able to do tonight, very simply, is to work our way through what we have for aides first, and then come back and then work our way through again on the secretarial and clerical staff. The aides are structured in different places throughout the budget, so I believe I have the right book tonight, so hopefully when I give you a page number, it will in fact be the exact page number that we're looking for. I am talking first of all about page 12, and if you look under 11-103, which is the second segment of numbers there, the instructional aides at the elementary level. As you well know, from time to time, we have needs for instructional aides to supplement classrooms that are overcrowded. You understand that we have classroom or class size guidelines that we follow fairly strictly, and because of the fact that we just don't have available space in many cases and our numbers run high, we do need some classroom aides. This represents 5 different positions, which is a similar number to what we have here this year. And I hope you would understand that that is a guess. We guessed roughly the right number this year, and we would again perhaps think that in that term next year. The bottom line always is that it could be more, it could be less. With the growth that we've experienced, though, it's not perhaps likely that we're going to experience no need, whatever. So that money is budgeted with the expectation that somewhere along the way we will need those classroom aides. Under 11-105, we have ESL aides secondary. At the secondary level, we have 1 ESL aide. We've had that position this past year, and this is just the continuation of that position. As you're well aware, we have many, many students that are in need of that kind of help. 11-107, we have a large number of ESL aides at the elementary level, 19 to be exact. And if you'll notice there, we've seen a tremendous influx in terms of the cost as well as new students. And the cost there is perhaps indicative, the over spending there in that category is perhaps indicative perhaps of three different things. First of all, if you look at 1993-94 versus what we budgeted this year, we obviously under budgeted quite significantly. We also have perhaps at least 100 more youngsters in the program this year than we've had, and we certainly expect to have that again next year, as well as the needs of the youngsters that are in that program. They are much more needy than we've experienced in the past, which in effect means much more time is required to be with them. So that the impact of the estimated and the budget for next year is based on those three different things I talked about, all very significant in terms of the cost. Under 11-114, the elementary school aides, in the past we have had experienced the need for people at the elementary level who have no breaks during the course of a particular day. And what we've done for a number of years now is to free up for 15 minutes each day those people who do not have any available time during the course of the day other than lunch for breaks. So that money is representative of numbers of people that would need a particular 15-minute break during the course of the day. Under math aides at 11-110, that represents the same number of math aides that we have this year, which is 20. However, we are increasing the number of days of instructional help, instructional support from 172 to 174, so that represents the increase that you see there. If you look down under 11-109, the very bottom of the page, the lunchroom aides, these are for, up until this year, elementary lunchroom aides. And we have two lunchroom aides in each building and approximately 2 to 2.5 hours for each one of those aides. For the first time this year, we experienced the need at the secondary building at the high school. And that was caused primarily because of the fact that Dr. Bond has a significant number of people that are assigned to a 6th period assignment, and he has very limited numbers of people available to him for assignment during the lunch lunchtime periods. So that for the first time this year, we added 3 people to help control the lunchroom activities. And it would appear certainly that we're in that same kind of a need next year. So that number reflects, and the difference in the two numbers reflects 3 new people that we've had at the high school this year, and it also reflects a 3.2% increase. Now, I will qualify that to some extent because we pay lunchroom aides $6.50 an hour, and it is an incredible feat to try to get people to work for that. We are increasing to $7 an hour in this particular budget if the board approves it. For most of those people, about 26 out of the 29, they would move from that $6.50 to $7, which is more than a 3.2%. The other several people would move 3.2%. Just to give you some idea of the difficulty that we have in staffing the elementary lunchrooms, at the beginning of the year, we began with 19 new people in the elementary lunchrooms. We have since replaced about 14 of them during the course of this year. It is a very difficult position to fill, and it's a very difficult position to keep filled. Dennis has not been quite up to par yet in terms of where Bill Hartenstein was, because we used to lose many of them through Bill Hartenstein. Bill would see them in the cafeteria, he would like them, and the next thing we know that they'd be offered a position to work in the cafeteria. But we have an awful hard time trying to get and keep people in that position. And certainly $6.50 an hour is not an awful lot of money to be paying. That's why we feel the need to extend that to $7 an hour. If you would turn over to page 20, please. I'm sorry, forget 20. I'll come back to that. I want to stick strictly to the aides, and then I'll come back to the secretaries. On page 64, At the middle part of the page, we have under category 22014, we have library aides at the elementary level. What this represents is a number of people who fill in the library when the librarians are not there. We do not have full-time library coverage in every building, but a decision was made some time ago that if the full-time librarian wasn't there, we would staff that library with one of the library clerks who would be available for that additional time. So we budget each year to enable us to fill in for the full-time librarians with a clerk who will open the library and let the youngsters at least get into the library and take care of the books and that sort of thing. So that money, excuse me, that money represents what we spend in terms of doing that. 22016, the library aides at the secondary level. We have 5 library aides at the secondary level, 1 in each of the middle schools and also 2 at the high school. And obviously, if you're familiar with the high school, it's a very busy place, and I think you'd find the same thing to be very true at the elementary level as well, or at the middle school level as well. Under 22017 and 22019, these are the library clerks that we employ full-time in each of the libraries. The elementary level, there are 13 of them, and at the secondary level, again, there are 5, 1 in each of the 3 middle schools, as well as the 2 at the high school. We also have aides, or what we call nurses' aides, or support for the nurses when the nurses are not in the building. Again, as you're well aware, we do not provide full-time support for certified nurses in all of our buildings, and obviously the reason for that is simply that it's a very expensive proposition. They are considered professional employees. They are paid on the professional salary schedule. So we do employ health aides. This is found on page 99. It's under 24011. We have 12 different people in those positions right now. Obviously, some of them are part-time and some work a little bit more than the others. But they provide full-time services with the combination of the certified school nurse along with these staff nurses or health aides. That's the full range of aides that we have. If you want me to move into secretaries or take a break there and just talk about them, I'd be happy to do that.
Just real quick, around board questions. Vicki, to your side.
Hey, Fred, I'd just like to ask, when you mentioned about the middle school aides that we do use them, I see a $0 figure for both this current year and next year's budget.
Yes, you'll see that in numerous places throughout the budget. What we've done is to combine all of the secondary buildings into one category now. So wherever there was a middle and a secondary, you'll now see just secondary, and that would be the combination of budgets from last year to the
Okay,
one
so
budget
it's just
for
not
this
a
year.
figure to be added later to what's already here? It's
No,
one
what
that
you
just-
see is-
Because I heard you mention, and
No, that's
well, there's no dollars there.
Mrs. Shar, according to state code, elementary is K to 6, and now that all the 6th grades are moved back, we really have no middle.
That's fine, I just heard them talking about them being there, and
Sure.
I didn't think they were working for free, so I was curious as to why there were no dollar figures. And on the ESL tutors,
Yes.
is there any other change other than the additional people? Are we maintaining the same status as far as the ESL tutors are concerned? Because I've heard different things about potential changes.
We've had a lot of discussions, and Judy and I have talked a great deal with Dr. Mangano as well in terms of what model is going to be most helpful at this particular point for the ESL. We've looked at a model where it would be more similar to what we do at the high school and also at the middle schools where we have professional employees that are doing it.
Itinerary?
No, they're not, well, they're full-time people. You know, at the high school, as an example, we've had that person there for as long as I've been here. At the middle schools now, there are a couple different people who service the different buildings. but we've always, in the elementary buildings, handled it through the tutoring type of a model. We've looked at that, and I'm sure that we're not done with that conversation yet. We just felt, though, for this point in time, that we'd continue with the tutoring model for another year.
So there's no plans for this current year or at this moment anyway? But is that also for elementary? You mean both elementary and middle school would maintain the same?
Yeah, elementary is the only one that has the
Employee
tutoring
level.
program. Yeah,
Okay.
secondary has the other.
Thanks.
Mm-hmm.
I'm finished.
Mr. Allen?
No question.
Mr. White?
Fred, could you differentiate for me the difference between a library clerk and a library aide?
A library clerk is truly technical or clerical in all the different things that they do. They do the typing, they do all that kind of stuff. The library aide is much more involved in helping youngsters and being supplemental to the instructional program as well.
More apt to be a professional librarian or some information science?
Yes, to some, excuse me, to some degree. And I'm trying to think if we have anybody at this point that's certified. I don't think so, but it is a different level of expertise, a different level of expectations, as well as the the type of things that they're doing.
Okay, thank you.
They deal very much more with the kids.
Thank you.
Okay, and Mr. Clemens?
No.
I guess, run through, not run through, library clerks, how many do we have, and is the number staying the same?
Yes, we're not adding any positions in library clerks or library aides this year.
Is there one per elementary plus some of the secretary, or how do they distribute it?
There's one per building.
Okay, I'll go last. Fred, if you would, could you break down for everybody who is in the bargaining unit or the teachers union, professional union, and who is not? I get that question a lot.
Okay.
People don't realize nurses are in the bargaining unit. If you could break down who's who before we begin.
The only people I'm dealing with tonight are people who are not bargaining unit people.
Okay.
Bargaining unit relates to teachers or professional employees, and the broad definition of a teacher is a classroom teacher as we know them, the librarians, the guidance counselors, the nurses, the school nurses, the psychologists. They're all incorporated into the bargaining unit. They're all professional employees. As a result of being professional employees, there is the requirement that they be degreed and certified. With the other staff, the support staff that are not part of that bargaining unit, they have not opted ever to belong to a bargaining unit, so that they are separate in terms of their responsibilities and have nothing to do with the bargaining unit, any kind of a bargaining unit.
But in the bargaining unit, we also have our psychologists, our nurses, under personnel.
Yes.
All the categories.
Librarians.
In the library situation, have we ever made use of volunteers, or has it been necessary to have employees, that volunteers could not be used in that clerking or aiding capacity when the head librarian is not available?
No, we use volunteers as well. I think that our experience with volunteers has always been very, very positive, and I think that's reflected in the work that Ken and Gail do in their office, as well as the support that we get to have a lot of different things done. But I think also we found that to try and rely on volunteers to do many of the things that we have to do on a daily basis, it becomes a hardship. Many volunteers are available on certain times of the day or certain days or whatever. But we do use some volunteers, but we feel that it's better to have paid employees that are covered with our policies, our insurance policies, in case of liability and that sort of thing.
Okay, so volunteers are not used to cover absenteeism.
Volunteers are not used to cover absenteeism.
Okay, back to the ESL concern. I know that you're still discussing matters with ESL.
Yes.
And if you would just consider, as you go back to those talks, I'm on the board of the IVOC, Indian Valley Opportunity Group, and I hear nothing but rave reviews about the tutoring model that we do have and the ESL instructors this district has. And I hear that all the time, and it's a pleasure. And I guess what I wouldn't want to see would be tutors everyday ordinary people that have been there working with these kids, let go in exchange for those that would fill a bargaining unit. I would not want to see an exchange of tutors for teachers in the bargaining unit. And when these folks have done such a good job and are talked about in the community in a good way. I hate to see that happen, if you would take that in consideration as you go back to your talks. Also, Fred, I'm anticipating, or I'm expecting that 3.2% is the increase that you have in here for aides.
Yeah. The classroom aides, just going from 7 to 750 accommodate more than a 3.2%. So that's all that's there for them. The math aides, their hourly rate is much higher, so we haven't done anything with that. The ESL aides, we've kept, I think, at the same rate. The cafeteria people, as I mentioned, we're moving from $6.50 to $7, so that accommodates that. There are a couple other people that are a little bit more than $6.50, but still under $7, and we've moved them to the $7 as well. And I wanted to go back and hit on the special ed aides separately, but to tell you there too, we're increasing from $7 to $7.50 an hour there in this budget. Again, that doesn't impact on great numbers of people. It does on perhaps half a dozen or 10 people, but overall it doesn't have significant impact. But otherwise, it's a 3.2% increase.
I guess this board's been thinking 3.2 since we began negotiating with the teachers, and I think we've all been focusing on that. So at any point along the way, if you'd give us a heads up in your personnel report if it changes, that 3.2 changes along the way, in any category.
I wanted to keep the secretarial part separate because there's a different arrangement that we've had with them in the past, and that does reflect on something that adds up to be different than the 3.2, and I'd talk about that separately. But
Great.
everything else is the 3.2%.
Okay.
And by the way, when we talk about that tomorrow for the other people, it's the same thing as well.
Great. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the audience, if you'll indulge this board, if you would save your personnel questions till we're through to the end, as opposed to going aides, secretaries, and then general personnel, maybe board questions or answering some of your questions. So if you would just hold those, we'll then have audience citizen questions at the end. Fred, if you continue.
Okay, I'm going to go back and deal with the special ed aides on beginning on page 26. If you look under 1202728 and 040, you'll see that actually there were the actual in 93-94, and then in 94-95 0, and estimated 0, and budget 95-96 0. Dennis has had to go through I guess it's a budgeting or auditing kind of thing where we no longer budget anything in this particular category. It does get picked up in a couple of the other different categories. I want to explain that to you because in trying to put all this back together again now for the next budget, it's hard to get you to look at one thing and see that it's in relationship to another, because it really isn't. And the same thing is true with the teachers. Their budget, they had been budgeted in one category. Now we're finding them in different categories as a result of what Dennis has had to do with the budget. If you would respect what I'm saying, that overall what we have budgeted is in line with what we have spent and what we are budgeting from this point on. And I can be more specific with that if you would like in terms of the actual numbers. But as you look through them here, it is hard to just look at one number and compare it to the next and say, well, that makes sense to me. It is very confusing. If you would look down on page 27 under 12029 and 12030, you'll see there are some differences between budget and estimated and next year's budget. You'll also see, again, the question that Mrs. Sherry asked a minute ago, that where we have middle schools anywhere, we've taken that out, and that's become a part of the secondary numbers. That does not reflect any new people. On page 29, under 12050, which is where we have our aid communication disorder, the budget for 94-95 versus the budget for 95-96, I'd like to tell you that reflects a real prudent approach on our part. very honestly, that person, the two people we had budgeted for 94, 95, one of them is budgeted elsewhere now, and only one person remains in this category. If you move to page 30, again, down underneath the second part there, you'll see the SED, special ed emotional support for elementary, secondary, and again, the zeros for the middle school. The only change there really is that under 12035 for autistic, that reflects two people, since now we'll have two different classes in autistic youngsters. That's one of the new positions that we'll talk about later on tomorrow, I guess, when we get to that. I told you that if you want to look down under 12033 and 12034, which is on page 31, this, of course, is where we had many people in the learning disabled categories. And again, we've combined the middle with the secondary. But you see there what I was trying to say to you, that if you look at what we budgeted, what we're estimating, what we're budgeting again, they don't really jive, but they're picked up throughout the course of all these. And to give you an idea of what I'm talking about, in 94, 95, we budgeted about $552,000. We're estimating to spend approximately $528,000, and for the new budget, we're estimating probably about $553,000. But if you look at them on an individual basis, it's hard to pick that up. Are there questions on special ed?
Around, Mr. Clemens? Around? Suzanne? One question, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mr. White.
Okay. What was the nature of the accounting change, Dennis?
It came from the state, Mr.
State mandated?
Yes.
Okay.
They changed the code numbers for the different exceptionalities, and they were combining them, and I guess for their purposes up in Harrisburg.
Okay, thank you.
Special ed, it's like who's on first, trying to figure out, and this is atypical because of the bigger change, but each year we struggle to try and put it back together again in terms of what we initially started out with. That's what I'm trying to say, that the more important thing is what we budget and what we spend.
Okay,
It's not
thank
just
you.
special ed, it's the whole government. Jeez. Any spots here available for tuition students? Any recruit possibilities in the special ed areas that we may have? Take, for example, your autistic group. Any opportunity for outside recruits to come in? Tuition students for those spots that you
See, our
have open?
problem with that right now is our numbers are so high that we fill our
You fill your own?
slots with our own children. Now, when we talk a little bit about some of the programs coming up, it is a possibility.
If your staff-student ratio has a
Is
gap, you
within the
could fill it with
range,
a...
and we could afford to do that with other districts. I mean, that would really help us financially with special ed.
Certainly would. Plus, you'd have to commit for a year, though, at least, right?
Dennis and I also just attended a workshop to talk about how to actually draw up the contracts for other school districts. So if we could possibly do something like that, it'd be a creative approach to making some money
Absolutely.
and helping to increase our programs.
Absolutely. Okay.
I have a question.
Sure.
On the emotional support and the academic support, that's also an example. We didn't break those down as they are here, did we, last year? Last year's budgeting, or?
Yeah.
Emotional and academic, I don't recall, it looks like a rearrangement of the listing. I'm wondering if that has something to do with the fact that we've got emotional support moving up $100,000 from 604 to 700,000, or is there a significant addition of students being placed?
Where are you, Vicki?
Oh, I'm sorry, I'm on page 30.
There's a different book.
No, I got my. See the grand total on emotional support, 1230.
Yeah, it's all in the way they're categorized, because, like I said, it doesn't reflect any new positions at this point.
We've had to
So that
change
doesn't-
some positions around where we needed paraprofessional support in some of those classes. We use some of our learning support aides to do that. It's really based on the need of the children.
I'm seeing a shift of dollars, but not,
Fred, isn't
new.
that there are 2 aides? Can we shift 2 aides there from a prior? The autistic aides?
Yes,
Aren't they down there?
we moved one out from the other place, but we also have a new one because of a new position.
Correct.
That we'll be talking about tomorrow night.
We can get back on that?
I see the number, could we,
Get back on that?
Sure.
Go ahead, Fred.
Okay, other,
Sure.
no further questions on the special ed?
No.
I want to talk about the secretary and clerical. And I had indicated to you that it's a little bit different than what we do with the other categories. Several years ago, if you'll recall, we went outside and hired a consultant to come in and look at our secretarial salaries and try to draw some conclusions in terms of whether our methods of payment are fair, what they're being paid is fair, and what kind of salary and compensation package we should be providing. And at that time, the board bought into it. And we've kept pretty much, I think, intact with the initial intent of that. What we're saying very simply is that there are several different parts of the secretarial compensation package. And what I've done here is to budget for all the different components, the several different component parts of it. It's entirely up to the board in terms of whether or not they want to continue with it or fund some of it out of the increase that the 3.2. There is a 3.2% built in for secretarial salary increases, so that if you were just to take everybody who was here this year and they come back next year, everybody would get 3.2%. There are some other parts to it, though, that are important and that we've tried to keep intact. We have said that in order to pay them fairly, they should be paid at a midpoint of their range within a 5-year period of time. And again, understand that the 5 years was strictly arbitrary. There's nothing magic about 5 years. It just seemed to everybody concerned at that point in time that a person having been in their job, doing their particular work for 5 years, should be at the midpoint of their range. What that implies is that people who are underneath that or below that midpoint in the range need to get some additional compensation each year to get them toward that midpoint. Because people were so far removed, some of them from midpoint, when we hired them, it's taking a long while. We had said at first that what we wanted to try to do was to space out people who were at 80%, as an example, and some were even a little bit less than that, that within the 5 years we would get them there in 5 appropriate steps. And we backed off of that the last year or two simply because it got too expensive, but kept the main theme being that at the end of 5 years they should move to their midpoint. So that what we're recommending here is that everybody who is less than the midpoint be granted 2% additional monies, so that it moves them toward that midpoint more quickly than just getting the same as the 3.2 or the same as everybody else who is at midpoint. We've also felt that it's more important than anything else, actually, for those people who have been waiting, and some of them have waited. I guess last year was the last year that people had waited a long time to get to that midpoint, but there are people who stay at the same level for a given period of time and then have to move to midpoint, so it represents a fairly significant jump for those people from 86% or 84% or whatever it is to the midpoint because their 5 years is up. So we have, I think, 5 or 6 people this year that need to be given that bump, that they go from wherever they are right now to that midpoint because they've been here at very minimum 5 years. So I'm talking 3.2%. I'm talking additional 2% for some people who are well below their midpoint. I'm talking about those other people who have reached the 5 years and need to be moved. Now, beyond that, there was another concession that we talked about and last year did not ask the board to do it, as a matter of fact, but it's there again, and I'd like to just at least pursue it for a moment with the board. We have a lot of different people who felt that seniority was overlooked in this system, that They spend 5 years here, 10 years here, 15, 20, and there's no individual recognition for it. We're not talking about people that are getting significant sums of money or the recommendation for significant. We're saying a person with 5 years, when they've completed their 5 years, we get $100. 10 would get 2, 15, 3, 24, and if you're 25 years, you could get $500 in recognition. And very honestly, it's the recognition that's every bit more important, I think, than the actual value of what we're giving. And that represents some money. Just to go back and sort of put that in a little bit more perspective for you, if we were to do all of that, it would cost a total of about 4.2% as opposed to the 4.6% as opposed to the 3.2%.
Effect on budget?
Effect on budget, yes. Total effect is $40,000 beyond the 3.2%. To break that down even more for you, to move, and again, we have well over 100 people that are in that category. It would be about $15,000 for all those people that would get that additional 2%. It would be approximately $21,000 for all those people who move to the midpoint, and obviously that's a significant amount of money for some of those people. And for the seniority part of it, it's about $3,700, but that would total about $40,300. So that all of that is reflected in here. I don't anticipate that the board wants to make a decision on that tonight. I wouldn't expect that. But I wanted you to know that we've proceeded with all the different component parts of what the secretarial compensation package includes. If there are amendments to that or other ideas that the board would like to pursue, then certainly we can talk more about that. But this budget does reflect that additional monies for those particular purposes.
Just a point of clarification, Fred, for public's sake. The range, salary range for full-time starting secretaries and our highest paid secretary full-time is what?
Our highest paid secretary is our superintendent secretary, and she's at about $36,000.
12 months?
Excuse me?
12 months.
Oh, yes, absolutely, 12 months.
And you're starting full-time?
It's hard to give you a good answer on that in terms of the starting salary for full-time. We have people as low as $11,000 and $12,000, and I suppose maybe you're talking about full-time being 12 months.
Mm-hmm.
That would probably be closer to $15,000 or $16,000.
For the 12 months?
For 12 months, yes. We have people with very responsible positions, such as secretaries to the elementary principals, who are in the $20,000, $22,000, $23,000 range. They're 10 months, but 210 days. But it's not a group that I would say to you is overpaid at this point.
Of course.
But I would also tell you that I'm not uncomfortable with what we recommend, simply because when we did the survey work with our consultant, we surveyed through the Delaware Valley Manufacturers Association, I guess, and they used as a base several hundred different companies, and we were compared to many different positions in those different companies. We also went out then and surveyed 12 contiguous school districts and a couple that weren't contiguous, that were large like us, with similar positions, as well as the IU, to try and see what kind of relationship our salaries were to what they were paying. Very honestly, we can never begin to compete with our IU. We can't even begin to compete with the money that our IU pays to their secretaries and so on. But it's I'm not saying that they're underpaid. I'm certainly not saying that they're overpaid. I think that for the most part they're fairly paid.
I just think sometimes people look at the salary portfolio of the school district based on what teachers receive and focus in on that, and they don't realize that there's many other employee groups making considerably less than 12 months, and that they need to be recognized for what they do make and not what is assumed they make.
I would say, without fear of contradiction, that All of our service staffs work extraordinarily hard, and we do not lead the pack in any of those categories. And I think that, you know, they're a wonderful group of people. I believe that as we talk about arts group and you know, certainly whatever other groups we talked a little bit last night about transportation.
Are you ready for questions on secretaries?
As
To
ready
this
as I can
side,
get.
Mr. Clemens.
But out of those 100, will there be some that will receive just the 3.2?
Yes,
It will?
yes,
So-
absolutely, yeah.
Mrs. Castle.
Fred, you mentioned a $40,000. Is that all salary increases in secretarial?
That is not all salary increases. That's just to do the supplemental things that I mentioned to you.
Okay. Okay. And you also mentioned recognition, raise, bonus.
Yes,
Do I understand it to be based on longevity?
based on longevity. That is
Wasn't-
correct.
Don't you get a raise? Don't you get that
Sure.
3.2% for
Sure.
longevity?
You do.
Stick it out, you get a raise? Well,
Yes.
Don't we have anything for performance above and
No.
beyond the job description?
We've gotten away from performance awards. We got away from them from administrators a couple years ago because it got very ugly with comments from the community. We've gotten away from the performance bonuses as far as this staff is concerned as well, because it just, to try to get the additional money has always been difficult. And you know, we think that having a system where they're rewarded to the best that you can for what they do, that's as good as we can get. It costs more money for people to get awards for performance. And like I said, we have not had performance bonuses for a couple of years with our secretaries, and we did not have them for a couple of years now with our administrators.
It seems redundant, or that's not the right word, but an extra bonus just to stay.
It is.
Isn't that what the raise is for?
If you're saying just staying and living from one day to the next to get that $100 after 5 years, $20 a year that you're going to get it, because it's a one-shot deal, you get it that 1 year, and then 5 more years later you get the $200. I can't quite get to that level where I think you are in terms of they're just going to get it because they're there. It's just a little bit more.
It's not tacked on to their annual salary and then.
No.
Okay,
Mr. Ricky.
thank you.
No. Mr. White.
Fred, would you go over the breakdown again for me, please, on the $40,000, which was the added? You mentioned $15,000 equated to the 2% that was needed to bring those people up to the midpoint?
No, just to get them closer so that it lessens that big jump when they go to the midpoint.
Okay, and the other numbers?
The midpoint, the people who will move to the midpoint was 21,000. And then the people with seniority was 3,700. I was just trying to find my notes here in terms of how many people that is in each category. I just can't pick it up quickly, but I'll get you that information.
And the seniority was based on the compensation plan that you were just talking about, the lump sum for?
No, I really wouldn't say that, David. It was not a part of the original agreement that we reached relative to the compensation plan, but it came out of, I think, the fact that we did have merit increases at first, but we did away with that, and then some of the people who have been here for long periods of time felt that they would like to just see some kind of, it's really not even an incentive, it's more like just a recognition. We do meet with the secretaries several times a year, and we do try to seek some input relative to how they feel about it, and that was a recommendation that came from them.
Okay, beyond those numbers, do you have any idea how many possible lump sums we could make based on longevity for the coming year? Is that estimated into that number?
How many people actually
would reach 15, 20, 25
Yeah,
years?
that's what I was just saying. I have all those numbers, and I just can't get my hands
All
on
right.
it. I know they're probably in the packet here somewhere.
Okay.
It's a fairly significant number of people, though, I'd say.
Okay.
David, anything?
Yes, I am, thank you.
Mrs. Sharp?
Fred,
Yes.
how long ago did this begin? This mission to bring everyone up to midpoint?
That mission began 5, 6 years ago, maybe.
I assume at that time you would began hiring according to those recommended salaries. And in the 5 to 6 years, with a 5-year program to move everyone to midpoint, we still have people coming,
Oh, sure.
yet to be done, brought up to midpoint. If you understand where
Yeah,
my question
yeah. And
is coming from.
I don't know, very honestly, Vicki, that we'll ever get away from, well, I don't know that we'll ever get everybody midpoint, because we have turnover every year. And during the course of the year, we see, a lot of people coming in and out, so that,
Well, my concern is though, if everyone 6 years ago was being brought in into a new system that was developed, why wouldn't they already, why would they have all this catching up to do? I mean, I thought it was the result of previous payment schedules that was corrected as of 5 to 6 years ago.
when we went through the study, we would have been better off if we were a new company just beginning and just hiring everybody. But the fact was that we had people all over the place. We had people that had salaries way above the midpoint. We had people with salaries way below it. And it just became very cumbersome, and it took a lot of doing to finally get to the point where we could come up with logical ranges for each category of secretary.
So each secretary has a different midpoint?
Not each one, but there are different categories of secretaries, so that there would be a significant, for example, you've got 13 elementary principal secretaries in the same category.
Okay,
have other
and they
groupings.
have a midpoint
They have a midpoint.
that is different than a secondary secretary or from an
They
administrative
would have
secretary?
they would have, yes, they would have a level that perhaps is different than the assistant secretaries to the elementary schools.
Could we, when you provide the other information that's been requested, be given a listing of what that midpoint dollar figure is?
Sure.
That is the objective of this, and I'd also like to know what is the range of the individual increase the percentages that would be falling under this, the compensation, whether movement to midpoint and seniority, as far as the employee listings of the various secretaries. What is the range that you see there? Whether it runs from 1% up to the highest is a 20% increase, or?
Vicki,
how
I
does
would
that show?
say to you that the seniority numbers don't make much difference.
Okay.
The 2%, you're talking in some cases as little as $150, $147, in some other cases much more than that, $500, $600 perhaps. So that doesn't impact significantly. Where the big increases would come would be the people who are moving from wherever they are right now into that midpoint, who have completed their 5 years. That represents a couple $1,000s in some cases.
That's a 4.6% one, is that right? The one that you said would range around?
No, what I'm saying is when you put all this together
Right.
on the basis of the total numbers, the total dollars that we're adding for this, which is $40,000, you put the 3.2% on top of all the salaries. The gross amount that you would be giving for secretaries would not be 3.2, it would be about 4.6. So it's about a 1.3, 1.4 difference at $40,000.
Okay, but you don't have how the range falls as far as
No,
high or
I-
low percentage increases?
I do not have that. I can get
Okay,
that for you.
that's okay.
That's no problem.
Thanks.
Okay. Fred, I want to point out, we're all capable of being critical, but if there's times praise is due and sometimes overdue. I think to your credit, after many, many years in this position, also to the credit of this board over many years, this district over many years, we're one of the few districts with one union, and that is our bargaining unit, our teachers' union, and those involved in that union, and that some of our immediate neighbors have secretary unions and transportation unions, and I think because there's been an attempt to treat the people properly, to respect their wages, to respect their employment conditions, we've been able to avoid unionization in other area groups that our neighbors have not been able to avoid. And so I think that should be pointed out as we continue on with the process for the budget with personnel. We keep in mind that we're most fortunate to only deal with one union every so many years. And thank you for that, and thank this district for having the wherewithal and the insight.
It has been helpful to go back and tell these different groups that this is what the board feels they're willing to do.
Okay.
And they have always felt that has been fair. I appreciate that.
Okay, go ahead, continue.
I would point out that out of all the different things that are included within this budget, we've only added one new position, one new secretarial position, and that position is in the curriculum office, and that's budgeted about $22,000. We've added significant amount of additional work in terms of the curriculum office over the last couple of years with additional supervisors and all. We've worked through this period of time with the same amount of staff that we've had, and it is very difficult to continue doing that. I would also tell you that if you recall, I came to you last year and said that we were going to embark on a new adventure as far as our substitute calling service was concerned. I want to tell you that it has worked out really well. I'm pleased. It is a technological advantage, I guess, that we've never had. It has been relatively error-free. We've had very few problems of any sort. It is amazing what it can do compared to what poor Mrs. Matusky went through. We have had times this year where we've had over 100 teachers absent on a given day. We've had many different times where we've had 70 or 80 absent on a given day. An average day, we're talking maybe 45 to 50, and that thing is working as we talk, as we sit here right now. That thing is working for us. It starts at 5 o'clock to make the calls, and it places all the calls. It's been a really good decision, I think, on the board's part to allow us to do that. And I wanted to tell you that what we've done with that, I had told you last year that we had the salary that we were paying Mrs. Matusky. Our total cost, Dennis, you remember exactly what the cost was for? Was it $33,000 or?
For the whole system?
Yeah.
It was 28.7.
Okay. And we do have a maintenance agreement that we have to buy into each year. But I had said last year that I felt within several years that it would be a break even. We also need a part-time person to manage the system, to input the data, to be here. We have a person the equipment is in my office. She is in at 6:30 in the morning, or a little bit earlier than that, 6:15. On the days where we've had a lot of people absent, and there are some days too where we don't have those numbers absent, the big numbers absent, but there just aren't as many people that want to be available that day. So she has a lot of different things that she has to do as well to sort of patch everything else together. So she spends probably about 3 hours or so in my office in the morning doing all the substitute stuff. And I feel it's really worked out well. I'm very pleased with it. So that as I'm talking about new positions, I wanted to mention to you that we spent the money that we were saving on the equipment, and that'll take a couple years till we really see the full payoff on that. We'll still have some cost involved with a person to do some operations there. She also is working part-time, which is a new position in the science department with the Merck Foundation, with the kits and all that. And she spends several hours a day doing that as well. So that it's worked out well for us, because one of my main concerns was keeping somebody that's willing to get up at 5:30 or so in the morning and be here and then work for a couple hours and not have anything else to do. So the two positions have really worked out well, having one person do that. But
Right.
in the budget, the only changes have been those.
If I could piggyback on that, I'd like to thank the board on behalf of my payroll department. One of the hardest jobs they have is matching up absence sheets with the substitute sheets. With Fred's system, we've been able to tie that right into financials, and it works like a charm. It's probably saved a couple hours for those ladies every week. So thanks from them.
It's only called me once, Fred.
We haven't really had many funny things. There was one, I can't exactly remember what happened, but it called somebody for a day we weren't in school or whatever. But, you know, otherwise, and it does talk to you, you know, it has those soundboards. And, you know, it has some interesting things. We have opted not to do several things that, this is a nationwide, national kind of a system, and it's in many, many school districts throughout the country. We had called a bunch of them just to get an idea of how well it worked. What we do not do that's available in the system, substitutes can call into the system and just take positions. I mean, the system would have all the available substitute positions, and a sub could call in and say, you know, okay, I'll take Inglewood on Monday, and I'll take National on Tuesday, or I'll go to fourth grade here. We don't do that. We want the control over who we assign to sub. And we have priority lists and all those kinds of things.
Pulls up and whoever jumps on board goes.
Yeah, we don't want to rely on the luck of the draw.
Right.
There are times, obviously, we get through the whole priority list, and hopefully we've done a respectable job in terms of having some good subs available. It also, many school districts allow the teacher to call directly to the system and report the absence to the system, and then the system just takes over and starts calling people. We have never agreed with that kind of a thing. When we had Mrs. Matusky doing it, teachers did not call her. Teachers call the principals, and the principals call the system. It makes a little bit more work on the computer with the principals, because it's ID'd with the social security number and all that, so they've got to have all that stuff available when they get their phone call in the morning, a teacher, or the night before, and the teacher's going to be absent, they call the system. Which again is advantage to them, because they can call the system anytime. But it's worked really well. But that one new position I talked about in the curriculum office, or the combination of two part-time positions, that's all that's new in the budget. I can work through page by page if you want, but you know, again, what I'm telling you is what I've said before, that what all that reflects is the 3.2%, the additional other parts of that compensation plan, as well as those two new positions.
Okay.
Would you want me to work through each page, or?
No, I didn't.
Can you just tell us the total dollar increases on those salaries that's involved? Or the departments, or is that? I know they're scattered, so personnel becomes really difficult that way.
I know.
When it's not by department,
Right.
you know, when we're not handling it by a department, but do we have any?
I can put together a complete worksheet for you, but for the big numbers, we're looking at probably about a 30, less than $30,000 increase budget to budget for the special ed teacher aides. For the secretarial clerical group, we're looking at somewhere in the area of about $50,000, and that reflects some over budgeting that occurred this year as well, so that the total of doing all that I talked to you about, budget to budget, actually reflects about a $50,000 increase. But I'll put together a complete worksheet on all
Yeah,
the different changes.
I'm under the impression this whole budget process, even though finance went the other evening, I mean, we're going to get back to finance, and we're going to get back to personnel, and you know, this is an opportunity for us to pull together questions tonight, and those questions that remain, more information can follow. How about just a table on those groups then? Just something you can put on
I
a
can
sheet.
do that.
And then also, I think there was a question by Mrs. Scher again on maybe a small table on the increases and how they would appear in that secretarial grouping.
I made a note on that.
To bring everybody.
No, what I'd like to just, even perhaps for this board, is when we get personnel sheets anyway, so perhaps we could see it in advance of how it looks when it's executed. Okay,
Sure,
thank you.
absolutely.
Do you have anything further on the personnel?
I do not.
Okay, board questions around, and then we're going to go to the audience of citizens. We'll start this way, Mrs. Scher.
No, fine,
No.
thank you.
Mr. Allen.
Thank you.
No questions?
Mr. Redcamp, Mrs. Kukowski, Mr. Clemens. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, please come forward, give us your name and address, and ask anything you wish of Fred in regards to personnel. Now, don't rush us. Mr. Wallace.
No. Oh, yeah, I did.
Hi, my name is Chuck Wallace, I'm from Lansdale. I'm amazed at Mr. Kelly for these numbers all the time, so
So are we.
it's amazing. I don't even know why you bring paper with you. As far as the service awards go, every 5 years giving different amounts, I think that's a great idea. It really makes people feel that they're appreciated, and that's super. It's a shame, though, that people are all given the same amount of increases, regardless of their proficiency or going above and beyond their expected work, especially when compared to people that barely are capable of doing what's expected of them. And it's a shame that's done that way, because that takes away a lot of the recognition for the people that are doing good, and it takes away some of the incentive for the people to do better. And it's a shame that the salaries are done that way. Question on the budget on page 64 for the library clerks in the secondary schools. It's going from an estimated cost this year of about $56,000 up to $86,000 budgeted for next year. And I'm just curious why, if we're only spending $56,000 this year, we're expecting to spend $86,000 next year.
The 86,000 is correct, and I think the 82 budgeted number is a correct number. I'm just not quite sure yet, and it's something I have to work out with Mr. Kelly in terms of that estimated. The actual number goes from the budget 82 this year to budget 86 next year, but the estimated of 56 seems to me to be very low in terms of where we are at this point in time.
If I could say something, what I think happens is a lot of these people are hourly, and when our system is encumbering, it's not encumbering their full salary. That's one area we had talked about.
Okay.
Since most of the encumbrances take in salary people, and when this hourly is in there, that throws it off somewhat.
Okay, because that shows up in a lot of the different aid areas.
Yeah. See,
That's one of the reasons they're basically hourly people.
that one is one where I can argue that I have a really good handle in terms of what we budgeted and what we're spending. It's only 5 people. I know they're there. I know we're paying them every day. I know what they're being paid, so that I know that by the end of the year, we're going to have to pay them pretty close to that $82,000.
Okay, well, I'm curious why we're not paying them that much this year then.
Well, I think he just hasn't captured it all yet at this point in time.
All right. Also, do all of the aid budgets take into account all of the increased classes that the teachers will be teaching next year at the high school, not being able to do things like lunch aids and other tasks that teachers are doing this year?
We have not budgeted any additional aid positions for any kind of support for next year for any of the different buildings, other than what we have here right now. Again, you can understand that in some of these situations, it may be more, it may be a little bit less. If it's more, then either we're going to have to do with what we have, or else we're going to have to come back to the board and ask for another position or two. There is one area that I know we're thinking about that will probably get discussed. I don't know whether later tonight as a part of the curriculum or perhaps tomorrow night to give some support to the English department in terms of the writing that's done there.
Okay, because I've heard that we're expecting teachers in the high school to teach extra classes next year. And understanding that this year there's a tightness on period 6, I think you said.
Yeah, the 6-period teacher,
Right.
6 teacher periods.
Are
That's not just at the high school,
Are we not
though.
anticipating having that problem increase next year with teachers teaching more classes?
We will have, what we're budgeting for next year, and again, we'll talk more about it tomorrow night with the professional staff. The high school will have some additional positions to accommodate some of that change in growth. But we have not budgeted anything else in terms of new either aid positions or other positions. We have people at Penndale, as an example as well, teaching 6-period assignments. So it's not just the high school, but there are a number of people in the buildings that are teaching 6-period assignments.
Okay.
That goes back to that problem I talked about a little bit before ago about the, I think you mentioned about the cafeteria problem. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Ellis. Anybody else, please? Anybody? If not, we're going to move on to the next item on the agenda. One more time. Okay, Dr. Persing, if you would, introduce community relations.
We have Director Ken Ware, who's been here for over 35 years and is recognized as a national figure in community relations. Ware?
Thank you, Tom. I have cousins in California. National figure, thank you. Those of us who work in school public relations welcome the opportunity to talk with you about the variety of responsibilities that are assigned to us. I think sometimes that the general public imagines that we do news releases and we do some publicity and that we stage special events from time to time. But in this school district and in most school districts, the responsibilities that are assigned to the Office of School Community Relations are much more comprehensive than one would think if thinking only in terms of news releases or media contacts or publicity. Before we get into the comments that I have for budget, I feel obliged to speak just a moment about the different budget books that are in the audience tonight. The Green Budget Book is a 175-page document. I think Fred was referring to page numbers in the Green Budget Book, the 175-page document. And that's a budget book that we're selling for $8. We've made it available to the working media people who represent the papers and the news radio station. And we've made a complimentary copy available to each of the candidates and each of the organizations, each of the several organizations that are active at present in the life of the school district. The general public is able to buy those books at $8 each. Now, for the first time tonight in this budget season, we have on the card at the back of the room a yellow-covered booklet, which is summary pages. And those booklets are available free of charge for those of you here, and you may, of course, take one for a friend or a neighbor who wasn't here tonight. So we're really looking at a complete budget book of 175 pages with a green cover versus a yellow-covered budget book with summary pages, which is not, we're not charging for. I think some of you are looking at green books and others are looking at yellow books, and you're wondering why there's a difference there. Let's begin by just mentioning, for the benefit of those of you who are here for the first time this budget season and for the television audience, the kinds of responsibilities that are assigned to the Office of School Community Relations. Actually, we have 14 distinct different categories of responsibilities that are assigned to us. And in the list that I'm looking at, number 14 is sometimes the most challenging and provides us with the greatest opportunity. Number 14 is other responsibilities as assigned by the superintendent and the board president. I think my cabinet colleagues would agree that oftentimes the work that is most challenging, most demanding, and serves the larger agency are those special assignments from the superintendent and the board president. In the order they're listed on this particular sheet: first, board secretary; second, community relationships; third, internal communications; fourth, external communications; 5, publications and editorial services; 6, the community education program; 7, community use of school facilities; 8, volunteer services; 9, the community television cable; 10, partnerships; 11, the North Penn School District Educational Foundation; 12, before and after school child care, which in this community is called the BASE program; and 13, a variety of administrative services. This represents the major responsibilities that we have. Board members have received a 22-page packet listing the responsibilities that we carry on an annual basis and on a regular basis, and that would be available to people from the public upon request in my office. On page 40 of the Green Book, or, if you wish, in the handout tonight, let's look first at the area called Community Education Program, or as listed, Other Adult Educational Programs. That's page 40 in the Green Book. As you probably know, we have an evening supervisor for the Community Education Program in the high school, and we have supervisory responsibilities there 4 nights a week during the term of the Community Education Program. We have salaries for teachers listed, salaries broken out separately for the community aquatic program, which is quite a comprehensive program, secretarial salaries, and you'll see that there's a strange difference between budget 94-95 and budget 95-96. If we look at what was actually spent in the previous year, we spent some $18,500. It would appear that we were under budgeted for secretarial services in budget 94-95 because we do expect to spend more than the budgeted amount for that line item. Technical services includes all the trips and tours that we plan. Many of you know that we rent charter coaches from Hades Bus Service for tours that we sell in the community education program. We also have major relationships with the North Penn YMCA, with the Arts Alliance, and we sell in a cooperative way certain programming and certain registration with other community groups, and the listing technical services includes those kinds of payments. We have an allocation for postage, for printing services, for general supplies, as you can see, for books, new equipment, and replacement equipment. Perhaps this is a good time to explain that any expenditures which we have in the community education program, we have anticipated revenue, which is accounted for on page 3 of the revenue section of the budget book. In 1992-93, we actually received some $328,926. That was the community education program revenue. In 93-94, our actual receipts were $333,168. So I should assure you that our expenditures are directly related to income, which is anticipated in the revenue section. Some folks choose to call this a wash. We are not expected to make a large profit for the school district. We are expected to break even, and we are always pleased to show a profit of any amount. I believe, Dennis, since you're good with numbers, especially tonight, was it roughly $23,000 last year? In the neighborhood
It was in the low 20s. It was 23 is a good figure.
If 23 is a good figure.
But he's not going to play it.
I think he's not going to guarantee it.
The reason he's so good, Ken, is because he says 28 for everything.
Chooses the same
This is
number.
only 23, Fred.
I believe our profit was in the neighborhood of $23,000 last year. I should say that 20% of Gail Tatum's salary is assigned to the community education program, here listed as adult education. The program is well received, as I think most of you know. Our enrollment is good. We have troubled enrollment during a strike year when people aren't sure whether our programs are going to sell and they don't have confidence in whether we're going to have all our programs. But we look forward to ending this year with a good balance, and so far we have had a good season. The second item on your sheet is the television responsibility that we have. You see the salary listed for our television specialist. You see that we're anticipating a lesser expenditure this year for repairs and maintenance. We have ongoing expenses for supplies, as you would expect, for tapes and for supplies that will need to be purchased on an annual basis. We are asking for limited new equipment this year. The district and the board has been generous with the purchase of equipment. There is no need for us to continue to purchase equipment at the rate that we did during our startup seasons, and we are pleased that we have the quality of equipment that we do have. We're looking forward to an additional camera which we can take into the field to do more shows on location, if you will, and we have an item for replacement equipment. The Office of School Community Services, as I said earlier, 20% of Gail Tatum's salary is assigned to community education, so 80% of her salary is here. 75% of my salary is here. 25% of my salary is assigned to the board secretary responsibility. You'll see a significant difference in secretarial services and community relations from budget 94-95 to budget 95-96. We are not hiring any additional secretaries. The most significant thing here represents the fact that the receptionist, Patty Castello, who works here at the front entrance, was always in the past assigned to plant operations. We don't understand the unique tradition of that, but plant operations was always responsible for the receptionist. And we thought that was not properly assigned there, since I'm responsible for the supervision of the receptionist, and the supervision of that responsibility is in my portfolio, if you will. So costs for the receptionist have been reassigned. Technical services includes a lot of outsourcing of word processing. And we look forward to the day when we can cut back on the outsourcing of word processing. It served us well, because we did have a 3-person word processing department. Board members know that we're down to 1 person, and that we've been working now this year with a 1-person department instead of a 3-person department. This has necessitated some outsourcing, which we do not expect to continue. Workstations throughout the ESC and throughout the district are being upgraded, and our secretaries are enjoying additional capability in the area of desktop publishing, word processing. And so we look forward to being able to conduct that department as a 1-person department in the interim, at least, while we have so much material on file in the systems that we use there. In another significant thing, in addition to the outsourcing of word processing, I should explain that with encouragement from some board members and with the active participation of Dennis Kelly, we have improved Xerox capability in our photocopy center, and any number of print jobs that were formerly done in the commercial community are now being done and will be done in our own in-house word processing, photocopy center. And there will be less need to go into the commercial community for many jobs that you would consider basic jobs that can be done here, which we never had the equipment or the capability to do before. So we're thankful for that Xerox leased equipment that enables us to do many jobs which no longer will need to go to the commercial community. So that's a significant change for us. I think Dennis and others would explain as we go through the budget that traditionally here, supplies have been divided for this building into 3 parts. Supplies are charged either to community relations or to curriculum or to the business office. We look forward to the day when Judy and Fred and others get charged for supplies too, but we're not there yet. This is a 3-way division which Dennis assigns to us. In a similar way, postage is assigned to the 3 departments: community relations, curriculum superintendent's office, and the business office, and we divide the cost of postage. As you would guess, everything that's done in the Office of School Community Services, or Community Relations Office as it's often called, is done to serve all the people in this building and all the people in the district. There's not a day goes by that we don't have jobs and assignments and tasks for people throughout the district in every department in many buildings. The final item that I'd like to comment on our list tonight is the volunteer services. We have an annual volunteer recognition event. We have a system to honor 5-year volunteers. We're pleased that we have over 850 volunteers working each week in our schools, and they can tell wonderful stories about the contributions that they make. I enjoyed so much this morning hearing from a couple who volunteer in the kindergarten at the Oak Park Elementary School, and they told me with great excitement about their work there with kindergartners and helping them at the computer and helping them in other ways with their work. And they were absolutely delighted. And this senior citizen couple said, this has given us a whole new lease on life. They said, we just love going to the Oak Park Elementary School every Friday morning and working with kindergartners. Gail Tatum is primarily responsible for the volunteer services. You know we have volunteer coordinators in each building, and I think you would agree that this is a token expenditure for the 850 volunteers that work each week in our schools. So with that, I'll accept your questions.
Okay, speaking of token expenses, how many budget books did you sell last year, Mr. Rivers?
How many budget books did we sell last year? I cannot answer that. Dennis, can you?
28?
If you say 28,000, I'm going to choke you.
I can't remember.
I have no idea, but I would be surprised if it were 50.
Well, I'm going to
Oh,
seek
I don't
board,
think it was 50. I
not
don't
even
think it was
50, was it?
50.
Well,
28,
seeking
no.
board support, 5 board members can do anything they wish here. I resent that $8 fee for what people pay in taxes. Now, some of us get our children educated, but a lot of people out there don't get anything. So I resent the $8 fee. I do not wish that to be paid by the public, and if I could get 4 others to agree with me, and I appreciate it, we will move on to more questions.
I don't choose to disagree with you, but
Okay, but you
please
are.
be. Well, no, I'm not going to disagree with you.
Go ahead.
I'm going to go around.
An administrator.
Be aware that we do charge individuals and others representing groups 10 cents a page for things they request that aren't immediately ready. If I take 25 extra agendas from this meeting tonight, they're saved and we give them out freely. If 6 months from now someone comes back and causes us to recreate from our files agendas for a month or 2 or 3 months, we do that at 10 cents a page.
Well, I'm talking tonight about the budget, which is an annual document given out this time each year. Those things we could discuss later, but I want to deal with just this budget tonight.
Donna, at 10 cents a page, wouldn't it be $17.50 a book instead of
Well,
8?
We do.
We understand
give it a
that.
break now.
No. The difference would be is that the budget is a fundamental document. There is nothing more basic to public participation in the government body than a budget
Do I have your
document which
cons-
tells them where their money's going. I, for a long time, have never really accepted it. I've been here before. There used to be a system where budget books were made available for audience members. They left them and came back, and they were made available. I guess about 3 years ago is when the $8 fee suddenly evolved.
Do you have your
And I
consensus?
definitely, absolutely agree that I feel that the community's already paid for the budget document. There is nothing within the making of this document that the taxpayers of this community have funded.
Did you say yes?
Say yes?
I love her so much.
Well, you gotta argue.
Thank you, Mrs. Shar. Thank you. Mr.
We
Allen?
need a fifth vote, Donna.
I'm desperate, I know. Mr. Allen?
That's fine with me.
Mr. Whites?
I have no problem.
Mr. Redcamp?
I guess I have a little bit of a problem. Let me
Go
explain
ahead,
why.
sure.
This is 180-some pages.
75.
Pages. It has been described accurately.
Okay.
It's a very confusing document. This is laid out in the prescribed format of organizing costs so that the accountants and the people in Harrisburg can understand it correctly. It is not designed so that people in the audience, other than a CPA, and even many CPAs, especially if they're not into public accounting versus government accounting versus public accounting. And a person who's followed the budget for 15 years, and I know my way through these documents and how to find things, in reality, the summary pages are more than what most people need. These pages are what people ought to pay attention to because it explains things closer to how you can relate to it. And I think that if you say the $8 isn't the issue, but if people come in and we get 200 people requesting them, we're only going to produce, I'll be glad to give the $8 up, but we're going to continue to produce the same number of budget books. Those go, and if somebody wants more, they start paying 10 cents a page. I don't think that we should just keep producing budget books freely, because it's not a document that the average person can use effectively. And the people that get them now, they may learn how to use them, but the summary books and these sheets are how you go through the budget in reality so you can understand it. And that's what I think that we owe the public, and we give them those documents freely now. I don't think that you gain anything by not charging for this, and it costs us to make the extra copies.
I just want to add that
That's right.
when this was implemented in, I think it was 91, when we started charging, there were many hundreds of requests for those, which is where that original charge came from. Again, I have no problem with printing them and distributing freely, but we ought to be prepared for the fact that Should we get 200 to 300 requests, there's a significant cost involved.
And it's
Even though-
it's a
even
$100
though
million
it's-
budget.
I've never
Again,
seen
it's
Drop of the budget,
just to
Mrs.
let you know,
Kukowski.
it'll show up in a line
I
item.
don't-
Ms. Mengel, I am for dropping $8. I agree with you, and I disagree with Mr. Redcamp. I think it's very well laid out and very easy to understand for the average person.
Mr. Clemens?
I'd like to give it a whirl for a year, see what happens.
Okay.
See what
That
happens
was gonna be
next
my
year.
suggestion, Mrs. Michael, from a
Okay.
financial
My-
viewpoint, I mean, if you wanna give it a try and then see what the costs really are to the board.
I mean, for the accounting mechanism, I mean, I read almost a month into the budget, Scott Krause did an article and he called and he asked for the count of how many were sold. He was told 6. Now, I could count at least 12 people I knew that had the budget. And I'm like, well, where did the money go? I guess, $8 is coming in and we could account for 6. But also that with the discrimination or the picking and choosing of who gets it, I don't know how we say that someone from the media and someone that's a part of a group has a more valid and legitimate reason to receive a document that each have paid their own fair share for evenly as taxpayers or according to their average assessment, contributed to the cost of the making of
Well, I
the
think that
document.
the one thing, Mr. Sher, was if say the taxpayers group received a free one, if they chose to make copies for their members, that was their choice. That
But
was
what
on
about the
them.
Okay,
person
ma-
who isn't a part of a group? They have to organize their own group to get a free budget. And that's a mill of
So
property
few and
taxes.
far
I have a
Okay.
problem because they've contributed to it.
Mrs. Sher,
So
Mr.
I don't
Kelly?
know where we can go. Maybe we should wait for Mr. Bowman and Mrs. Leahy to argue their.
I don't think so.
You,
Point,
but-
counterpoint, well taken. We've got consensus, let's move on. Questions around, we'll start with Mr. Clemens.
What do we have to
on-
We
What
appreciate having one less chore.
But it's-
We are not
Thank
eager
you.
to sell budget books.
It's kind of embarrassing, but Mr. Clemens, questions of Mr. Weir on the community relations budget?
No, he did a very fine job explaining.
Thank- Mrs. P.
Yes, Mr. Weir, you mentioned the new Xerox capabilities.
Yes.
The question I had written down right before you said that was, how has the DocuTech impacted your budget?
Well, we have,
Dollar-wise?
I do not have an exact number of dollars, but I can tell you that jobs that would have been sent to the commercial community are being done here. The savings will be seen during the next year because we'll be printing documents during this summer for use during the next year.
Okay.
Most of the jobs that will be done in-house were done in the commercial community for this school year. The savings are to be realized.
Okay. Good, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Rickham. Mr. Whites.
No question?
Mr. Allen.
I just want to have you confirm to me that the community, or the adult education program is financially self-supporting. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, Mrs. Sher.
I would just like to know the prorating of the salary status. I didn't see where in the budget that there was the prorated amount.
It's
I
listed
don't
at
know
the
if it
end
was
of each,
covered.
it's listed at the end of each
Which-
group, Mr. Sharp. Say, if you look at page 87, you'll see, well, the salary includes 75% of Director of Community Relations and 80% of the assistants. It's at the end of each grouping.
I didn't, oh, that's right, this is a new document. I didn't have it
Correct.
in the.
It wasn't in the old.
It wasn't in my blue book.
Right.
It's not in the first edition.
It's not in the first edition, it's in this edition.
Second edition.
25%, and does it cross-reference to the remaining amounts? No?
Yes, see where it says at the end, see pages 40 and 73 for those other changes. I've tried to cross-reference them.
It's there.
Cross-reference them.
We have for board secretary, et cetera?
Correct.
Is it allowed through the school accounting regulations for adult community services to be on a separate fund, such as we have our transportation, our cafeteria fund?
No, they.
And our activities fund, or is it required to
The
go?
1600 series, the community ed, is actually a part of the accounting structure, and they want it in that same fund. They want it in the general fund.
Because I noticed it really comes under instructional.
Correct.
It comes under the instructional category, and lots of times when people pull out dollars and they're weighing instructional, they're not quite realizing that a part of that is a separate adult education program, not strictly related to the student body.
Right, the whole 1690 series is strictly adult ed. And it's under instruction because of the night school aspect of it. You know, they also do the GED
I know.
program through there. That's all run right through there.
But since it is dealing with adults and it is self-supporting, I just wondered if it could have been moved, such as
We
The
checked
purpose
that.
of the cafeteria account is for that very purpose, too.
Right, we checked that before, and they require it under the,
I have asked any number of times if we could keep certain responsibilities in the general fund budget and have certain other things apart from it, and that would enable us to carry a profit and to build a balance as the food services department is able to do, rather than losing the profit to the general fund each year. I have always been told that we should not have a separate fund, that it's much preferred that it all be in the general fund.
However, the self-supporting is raising the budget figures. It may be a wash as far as the community's concerned on taxation, but the dollar figures of your budget are inflated in both aspects.
The dollar figures are inflated for revenue, and as you can see, it's $382,815 this year and for budget 94-95, both in revenue and in anticipated expenditures.
Right.
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, last question here would be back to something Mrs. Perkowski touched on, printing outsource services. Seems like everybody wants a subcontract with North Penn School District. It's good work here, but do you have formal or informal bid process on outsourcing printing?
Both. For the largest job, the school district calendar, that is the strict competitive bidding. We get prices for other jobs. And to facilitate that, we have turned over much of the bidding responsibility to Dennis and to Kevin Eck, his assistant, and they will be bidding jobs that have already been turned over. I think we turned over some 12 or 13 different jobs, as I recall.
at least can.
That you're
So
going to begin bidding now.
Correct.
And that responsibility has been turned over to the purchasing department.
Is that open bidding or bidding by
That will be
invitation?
It'll be advertised in the paper, but I mean, we do have a list of, I think, 7 or 8 different printing firms, but it will be in the paper for those others who would
So
like to.
it'll be open,
to-
anybody
yes,
that wants in?
Totally open.
Okay, great. Okay. To the audience of citizens, please come forward if you wish and address Ken Weir, Community Relations Department budget. Name and address, please, sir.
I'm Bill Taylor from Lansdale. Mr. Sheriff brought a concern to me. Is there any document that expresses in text, in words, what the purpose, function, aim, goal, and so forth of this organization is? Or is it, as you said, that the budget is where it's found? Isn't there something?
I just listed as one of the most basic and
Yeah,
fundamental.
I'm just curious to know if there was
Of
one.
to the overall general community. We have many services that some people take advantage of and others do not, and we don't necessarily assess a charge for users only, such as the school system itself isn't weighed by, as far as charging or non-charging. It's not differential. I don't know our agendas. I mean, we wouldn't charge for an agenda coming to this meeting, and
Yeah, that's
once a year, I feel that, when we're in the course of the meetings, those who would want it. Maybe if someone were to come back 10 years from now and want a 1995 budget, which we're no longer, produced in extra copies sitting there, certainly then there'd be a charge assessed, as we do with other documents past their time.
No, I was not so much worried about that as wondering whether, to put it in a good light, are we constitutional or common law? Is there a document, booklet, or something shy of reading the minutes or the transcripts of all the board meetings back to the end of time? Is there something else that says what we're trying to do? Is there a
Here,
purpose
we have our
statement?
mission and vision statement.
Yeah, we
I
have
mean,
a
I don't.
Where is this?
It's right outside as you come through the foyer.
I hate to say it, but I've never seen it.
Okay, and we've had that, what was that, 1990, 91? When that was
It's part of the
developed.
strategic planning
91.
process that they
Thank you.
Is that what you meant? I'm sorry, I
I've
thought
never heard
it
it
was
mentioned under, and I've never had to notice it.
Certainly, we have a mission and vision statement, and there's a big plaque as you come through the doors, probably heading into the meeting room. You went right past it.
Thank you, Mrs. Scher and Mr. Taylor. Anybody else in the audience, please? Mr. Ellis again.
I'm still Jeff Wallace, and still from Lansdale. I just want to thank the board for having the faith in the public to be able to read this document. I'm not a CPA. I'm just a student principal engineer, okay? And I can get through this, okay? And if only CPAs can get through this, how can the board possibly decide whether or not this is the budget to have? So thank you for having the faith in the public to give this to us.
Thank you. Anybody else, please?
I knew that was a good thing.
Going once? Twice, we'll move on.
Could I
Yes,
comment
please.
regarding those who have purchased the budget book?
We need board consensus for a refund.
If you have your refund, Bob, and Jeff, we have a cash envelope, and I'm sure all the cash is still there. None of it has disappeared. And we can arrange for you to have a refund. In fact, John, I believe you have the envelope tonight because you were prepared to sell books. So if you can receive an authentic receipt from those who purchased, you can make a refund from that. And we will refund to those that we know purchased a book. I don't believe we kept a detailed list of names or addresses for those who purchased. So you would have to tell us and show us that you did, I guess, to be on the up and up. But we have all the cash, Vicki.
I know that. I'm just saying, Janice, we
I
don't
needed
even
to get
account-
back to that,
We
Vicki.
don't even account for it, but
We account for it, it goes back against copy.
But if anybody comes in with double coupons, it's accounted for.
Dennis, we won't be busting our revenue budget now, right?
That's correct.
Just want to check with the student cameraman, are we about time for a break? Do you folks need to change your tapes?
20 after.
Okay, raise your hand and help me out with that, if you will. Okay, we're going to move on. Dr. Persing, if you will lead again.
It is my pleasure to introduce to you one of the senior superintendents in Pennsylvania and one of the youngest and prettiest of the presenters.
Here, here.
Probably the prettiest of all the presenters, Dr. Fike and Mrs. Clark.
No, they have an extra reputation.
Here, here.
His introductions are tough to follow.
I'm ready to applaud.
We're going to be discussing the curriculum and instruction portion of the budget, and for the people in the audience and the board, we will be working from these white packets this evening. If you would turn into page 1, which is 3 pages in. Dr. Fike will first be addressing the per pupil expenditures. Dr. Fike?
Thank you, Dr. Clark. To develop a budget for 13 elementary schools and 4 secondary schools, we're adhering to the per pupil expenditure, the allocation adopted by the board actually last June. I checked the minutes, June of '94, and the superintendent felt we should try to stay within the same budget constraints. So if you look at the per pupil expenditure, we're using the same per pupil for regular gifted special in elementary, middle, and secondary. The figures differ. The 5360 is for regular, and if you take 25% of that and add it to it, that gives you the gifted expenditure. And if you take a half or 50% of the $53 and add it to that, you get the expenditure for special education, and that would be true in all 3 levels. If you like, you can take 125% of the 53, 150% of the 53, and that gives you the succeeding 2 figures. We have, just for your information before we get into some programs, we have about 1,000 gifted in the district next year and close to 1,100 special education students. And this budget is throughout your booklet, and it does include expenditures for the items listed in the middle of the page, supplies, etc. I don't have to read that for you. The additional students we expect, about 200 elementary and 262 secondary, reflects for 95-96 an increase of 462 students, and that's included in this budget using this per pupil expenditure. If there are no questions, I would like to move to the staff development. We've worked with the supervisors and including Judy's department, and I've listed for you all the activities we have. Professional skills is, for the most part, the induction program, and instructional technology, we have money in there. I'm going to say a little bit more about that later on, and I think Fred's going to make some mention about staffing for that, but I want to spend a little bit more time later in the evening on the technology. We do have some in-service there, staff development, And then the curriculum, I listed all the areas and kind of a highlight, a bullet if you like, what we plan to do in each discipline. And that goes through page 2 and page 3. The bottom part of page 3, the special ed, you can kind of cross that out because Judy's she's actually included her list on the following page. Correct?
Yes. Okay, if you could please turn to page 4 in your packet. In the 1200 series, which is really the category devoted to special ed, you're going to see a line item for $20,000 for staff development. There's a lot of curriculum work that happens on a yearly basis in special ed, and frequently the topics are determined by federal and state mandates throughout the year. If you just take a quick look at the topics here, you'll see that there are numerous ones that affect both special education and regular education teachers. The $20,000 line item has remained the same for approximately 3 years. So that is the budget for special education. Okay, during the next segment, I'm going to be referring to pages 5 through 11, which is the Montgomery County IU cost plan. Let me give you a little bit of background. Although our district provides an extensive variety of programs for special education, there still is the need for us to send several students who are considered low incidence population students to the intermediate unit for service. These include our children that are multiply handicapped. We have a few children there that are hearing impaired, and we have several that are there that are physically handicapped. And in addition to their program, they also receive related services, and their services such as speech, occupational therapy, physical therapy. This cost plan is an item that I have brought forward to you every year since 1991, and that's when the way we budgeted for special education changed in the state. You'll notice this year a line item, it's number 12508 in the green budget books. It lists $890,400 as the total cost for this plan. Now, when we got the run from the intermediate unit, they listed our cost at $756,983. The difference being that in the time that this document was drawn up, we lost 2 children that were coming into the district as multiply handicapped. And several of our students who we had thought were going to stay in school till they were 21, which they're allowed to by special education regulations, are going to be leaving at 18. So the likelihood is that I will be able to reduce this $890,000 by about $80,000 to $90,000, still allowing at least $40,000 for any students that move in that need a highly specialized program. I will tell you, we've had several discussions about the cost of this plan every year that we've gone to budget. I think we're at a critical crossroads with special education, particularly for these students, that we talk about the possibility of bringing some of these children back to the school district. It has long since been a concern of mine that we take our most severe children who have multiple health impairments, put them on a bus and send them to the intermediate unit on a 45-minute ride, when other school districts have really been proactive and have done this in-house, Norristown being one of them. It's something I'd like to explore next year. We have a space problem. Mr. Wood and I have talked about this several times. It would be something wonderful to do for the children, plus I also think it would be a cost savings for us in the long term. We brought the autistic students back. That program has been running like a clock the last 2 years. Those children are doing very well in the district, and I think we would be able to duplicate the same type of service with these children. So considering that the costs in special education never go down, and it would be the right thing to do for children, it's something I'd like to explore. We just need to find a space to do it in. Okay, the next topic, if you would turn to page 12 in your packet, that I will be addressing is alternative education. You can see at the top of the page the different alternative schools in our immediate area that we use. And I've also provided for you enrollment trends since 1987. I wanted to make mention here that the only placements that we control are those direct placements. With court-ordered placements, we pay only the educational component. The Department of Public Welfare pays the counseling component, which means it comes back to us as paying half. We have no control over these students. It's whatever happens with the court, but the district is then liable for these students for payment. At the bottom of the page, I've broken out the per diem and annual costs for you. If you take a look at those costs, you can see that the Simmons program, which is the intermediate unit operated program, appears to be the least costly. However, it's a program only for 7, 8, and 9, those grades, and they won't take any special education students, which is interesting because it's an intermediate unit operated program. It's one of the ones they run for regular ed. The reason that we had used Simmons in the past was because at that point in time, Lakeside didn't have a component for middle level students. Lakeside now has a component for middle level students, and they have an excellent pre-vocational program. I'm going to be coming forward to you probably at the June meeting to ask for the purchase of 40 slots for next year. Of those 40 slots, 13 are for special education students, and we would like to have the entire program with Lakeside. And another issue with this particular program, much like the Montgomery County IU cost plan, several school districts have been forerunners in bringing their alternative ed program back to the school district. Lakeside has really been helpful with those school districts in helping to get the program set up. Colonial was one of those districts who really was out in front, and it's called the Vantage program. This is another area where the costs continue to rise for alternative ed, and it's something I really think we need to look toward in the future, because I believe we could operate our own program here and do it effectively. Plus, with both of these programs, another nice feature, if we brought them back in-house, we could use some training for our students who are looking to go into careers involving alternative ed or maybe working in special education, would be in line with our tech prep. So I really, that's something I would like the board to work with me on in the next couple of months for the following school year. The last section that I'm going to address this evening is IST, or Instructional Support Teams. There's backup information that I've provided for you on pages 13 through 15 in your packets. The reason I'm bringing this to your attention this evening is because it involves a change in staffing. Just to tell you in a nutshell, the concept of instructional support is really that it's a strategy used by schools to prevent special education placements. In the 1991-92 school year, when the regulations changed for special education, the state came out with the concept of instructional support. It really is a pre-referral to special education. What you're supposed to do is exhaust everything that you have in regular education before you move to placement for special ed. It makes sense. At the time when we did our model for the state, we employed teachers to do that. We have 3 schools, North Wales, Englewood, and Knapp, that have instructional support. We have not really been able to expand the program because, as is typical with the state, they offered us seed money to get started, $29,000, and then quickly that was given to other school districts for a variety of reasons. This past year, I visited Central Bucks, and they have a different model in place where they're using full-time equivalents, and by that I mean they're using parts of the reading specialist job, the special education resource teacher's job, the guidance counselor who's already involved in this, and they have written a proposal to the state that was accepted, and now they have IST in every school building. What I am attempting to do is not to get rid of the program, because the program is really good and beneficial to kids, but I'm submitting a proposal to the state to see if in fact we can change our model to full-time equivalents, which means the 3 teachers that we currently have in place, we would utilize them for our special education positions, which I'll be talking about tomorrow evening, because they're all certified in special ed. So I wanted to bring that to your attention tonight just for you to think about. We will not be getting rid of the program for instructional support. In all likelihood, we will try and get it in every elementary building rather than just the 3 that we've had it in for the past 3 years, which really isn't fair or equitable. So I bring that to your attention this evening. Okay, Dr. Clark?
Thank you. To talk about the Merck Institute for Science, I've asked our supervisor, Donna Brown, to be with us. If you would, Donna, join us. I think you're familiar with the fact that we have well over $300,000 involved in this program, and Donna will walk us through this and tell us the district's responsibilities with it, which I believe we approved, and Merck. So this will appear on page 17 and 18 of your packet.
Dr. Frank, if if we could, and Dr. Brown, if
Oh,
we could
yes,
stop
right.
at this point and change the tape before we start another subject area, that'd probably be a big help. Just take 5 minutes. Ready? Ladies and gentlemen, as we did the other night, we're going to do again tonight, and that is at 10 o'clock we are going to stop, regardless at what point we are out on this agenda, and we'll pick up again tomorrow evening at 7:30. So nothing's going to be missed. It might take a little bit longer, but it's a process worth waiting for. So Dr. Brown, with that, if you will pick up where you are about to begin.
Okay. We're about to begin the third year of the partnership with the Merck Institute for Science Education. And it represents an expansion of the program philosophically, because I'd like to draw your attention to the fourth bullet down on page 16 of the white handout. This tells you about the next level of professional development that we're moving into starting this summer. We are going to implement what's called the Local Systemic Initiative. The Merck Institute for Science Education has applied to the National Science Foundation for a grant to cover an improved kind of teacher enhancement type of institute. And to help you with that, I do have just a brief handout, which is a summary of the proposal that went into the National Science Foundation. Merck will not know about that funding probably until June, but they have enough of their own funding to cover that. We will be sending approximately 50 of our K-8 teachers through this institute. It will be the first of a 3-year initiative designed to improve science, math, and technology education. So I represent not just science here tonight, and really we represent a linkage with our technology department and with math, because Dave Decker is very much involved in this institute as well. And this will also integrate some of the other projects that we have already underway here in the district. So it's an exciting opportunity for our teachers, and they will serve as leaders within their own buildings, within district teams, to improve science, math, and technology education. And this actually represents the bulk of the funding that Merck will be providing us with in the coming grant for next year. And remember, too, that this is still a very long-term partnership. This is the third year of a 10-year partnership. We're looking at a very long-term relationship here with the Institute. The next bullet describes what we've actually submitted in terms of a budget request, and that's on the following pages. This includes the materials and supplies that we use to teach science. It includes the professional development piece, the bulk of which I've told you about is the Summer Institute, but it also includes all the in-service we do during the year. Every time we introduce a new unit, and we expect to introduce a new unit this year at each grade level, that will involve considerable in-service for teachers. And part of the money is provided by the Merck Institute, in part by district funds. We also have the Science Resource Center. As Fred told you earlier, the person who runs our substitute calling service, the automated service here, is also working part-time with me as the Science Resource Center clerk. And it works out beautifully from our aspect, because I really need her in the middle of the day when we have things coming in and out. And her hours dovetail very nicely with her responsibilities in this building. And that resource center is over in Penndale, and I heartily invite school board members to come and visit the resource center. And probably some of the best hours are between roughly 11 and 3 when the clerk is working over there, but I would be happy to take you there anytime so that you can see what we've done in terms of how we actually move materials. And Art Wood's department is a vital part of that. And I really can't thank them enough for what they've done for us this year and have put up with in terms of an enormous move of equipment, which has to happen fairly frequently. And they're also supporting us with community outreach programs. This Thursday night we will have another science night, this time at Culp School, and we will have had a science night or a science activity of some form in every single elementary school by the end of this school year, which is quite a step up. and that's mainly supported by MERC funds. And we will also be spending a great deal of time this year on assessment, because part of the training that teachers will receive in the Summer Institute and part of the ongoing follow-up will involve improvement in how we actually assess how children are learning through our new science program. And if you look at the actual budget figures themselves, on page 17, the first section A really refers to all the units that are in place in grades K through 6 and the ones that we expect to add. Some are listed as to be determined. Some are still in the process of being written. And we are largely focusing on units developed by the National Science Resource Center, which is an arm of the Smithsonian, and kind of has the stamp of approval of every national science group or evaluation group. In terms of equipment, there's a bit of a typo here. Equipment support here is involving truly an expansion of our needs, because we are finding that so much of our material is shared. And with the change to the different buildings in grades 7 and 8, we are really short on materials that are used very frequently. The first one, centigram balances, is correct. The second one should read microscopes. And the third one is planetarium equipment, which involves a lot of upgrading in the planetarium, which is used very heavily and will be expanded even more in terms of services K through 8 for next year. In addition, something which does not appear on here, many of you may have seen photographs of or participated in a science night where you have seen the inflatable planetarium known as Star Lab. And I'm happy to report to you that the Merck Institute has donated long-term use of one of the Star Labs to our district. It is now housed at North Penn High School, and this piece of equipment runs about $15,000. And this is for our use as a district, and we expect to have that used quite heavily. We have had some teachers trained through the Merck Institute here at West Point, along with volunteers from Merck and Company at West Point, and there will be another training session on May 13th. And we have 4 slots available to us as a district for teachers to attend that training. I ran Star Lab myself last week at Montgomery, and I had just a great evening with a couple of hundred parents and kids in the dome. It's kind of a shock when you come out of there, but it was a very exciting evening. And if you look at page 18, you can see where this is the piece of professional development that is fairly large. This includes the in-service on the 3rd modular unit that we expect to add. And it would also include any in-service if teachers change a grade level or are assigned new teachers, whatever. We would bring them up to speed with training. And of course, the biggest chunk is for the K through 8 Summer Leadership Institute. And we had our orientation meeting for all the 50 teachers and many, many administrators who will be involved in the Summer Institute yesterday. Dr. Paravano was over here to introduce that for teachers. The support system includes the salary of the Resource Center clerk and also a membership in the Association of Material Science Centers. And I've recently been elected to the board of ASMAC, as it's pronounced, and this is a nationwide organization, and it will soon be online via the internet, which will also help to communicate between centers. We had a brief meeting at the National Science Teachers Association meeting in Philadelphia recently, and this was very helpful because we can share a lot of information on how we run our centers, and most of us are using the same software to track materials, so that's really a good line to have. In terms of assessment, we have requested that these funds that were allotted last year and we could not use this year be carried over, and Dr. Paravano has agreed to that. In terms of administrative and community support, we expect to continue with family science nights. And let me add that these are planned by groups of people. It's a little bit different from some of the other evenings that are held here. It originates with teachers, home and school, principal, and with me. It's a cooperative effort. so that I may provide some information, they may ask for some information, and the monies that are needed to support that kind of science night, if it's indeed a hands-on activity, are provided through the MERC funding or through district funding, however the match is. The bottom line here, if you look down at the totals, and this is always the good news because this is kind of the best deal in town. The district, out of the total budget of $334,380, supplies $161,885, and the Merck Institute supplies $172,495. And it is an increase over last year in terms of the percentage level, but this is the same increase that the other three New Jersey districts are experiencing. And this is a natural course of events. If you were to ask me what it's going to look like in the future, it will gradually be a little more district, a little less Merck Institute. Their idea is like the mother bird teaching the young ones to fly. We get a lot of help in the beginning, but soon we will be able to fly on our own because we will have received so much help from the Merck Institute. And it's, as I said, it's a long-term commitment, and it's a very positive one for all of us.
Thank you, Donna. I would like to add, before Donna leaves, we did go through the science textbook selection, and we'll have those for you on Tuesday night. They'll be probably across the hall. We've completed all the selection, I believe, through, that's mostly middle school and high school.
Middle
correct?
school and high school, yes.
And that amount for this year, it's the year for science is approximately $150,000 is in the budget this year for science textbooks. So this is really K to 8, what we're talking about here, and then the 9 through 12 we'll be dealing with next week as far as textbooks are concerned. Okay. Thank you.
Dr. One moment.
Yes.
Don, if you would. Dr. Fike, at this point, in light of the 15 minutes left for this evening's budget session, could we, I know Judy has given some aspects of this portion, and so have you, and Donna shouldn't leave until there's a chance to answer questions. So if we could go back to board questions and then audience questions, that may round out the evening, and you may be on deck tomorrow night as a start again. Okay, if we could do that. Let's go around board questions. Mrs. Sher, we'll start your side.
Regarding the textbooks that you brought up, will there be equipment to go with those, in line with the new textbooks at the middle schools? The
Yeah,
textbooks.
a lot of that's already in here.
Okay, to follow with the direction of those
Right.
7th grade books or 8th grade books, because I know my son's at the middle school, those books are pretty old. And I
Those
knew
are
they were
antiques.
waiting for everything to get organized so
Yes.
that you knew what you
Yes.
were looking for and coordinating on from the lower levels on up.
Right.
And so they can look forward to those textbooks
Mhm.
in the fall.
Yes.
Okay.
And in fact, another piece of good news is that as soon as we have board approval, the publishers involved have agreed to supply teachers with those materials before the end of the school year, so that they may indeed start their planning early.
Okay, I'll just ask one general question. It isn't necessarily for Mrs. Brown, actually. I'd like to know, since we're dealing with pupil services and curriculum, as we've gotten the budget, we can somewhat see what's in here. Sometimes you don't always see if something's been removed. Are there any planned cuts? Is there any proposed cuts in any of the curriculum, or definite changes in programs?
The one change that I brought up would be with the instructional support teams, because if you go back and look at the budget, there are 3 positions in there last year that were designated instructional support. And I really want to make it clear, we're not cutting the program. We are going to submit another model to the state for approval of the program.
So there'll be a change, a modification perhaps?
There
in
will
the
be a
delivery.
modification. And it is one way that we can get that on board in all the schools. It is really a worthwhile program. To be honest with you, before the state regulation came out, North Penn was doing a pre-referral model where we would use our own staff. Unfortunately, with special education in the state, there's been many changes, and every time there's a change, someone comes up with a new concept. When IST first came out, it was an assumption by districts that you had to use a teacher to provide that service. And lo and behold, school districts that were very large, like Central Bucks, submitted another model, and it was approved. You know, that was not made clear to us at the onset of this. This is way back in the 90-91 school year. So we'd like to try that, because at the rate we're going, we cannot add a teacher for 13 elementary schools. That's just not going to be possible for a while. It will take us to the year 2000. So all those schools that don't have instructional support are missing out. And this would be a way for us to manage to do the model across the system.
Dr. Fike, in the secondary curriculum,
There are no programs that are being cut. We're curtailing one or two as far as not expanding them, as was planned maybe in the past, but we're not cutting any programs.
Okay, will the tech prep be on schedule?
Yes, in fact, we've expanded a number of offerings. I have that.
Okay.
That's later on in my
Okay,
presentation.
that's
I'll
fine,
give you
that's
that.
fine. I'd just like to, while we're on curriculum.
It is expanded.
Take a look at if there was anything that's been redlined, omitted,
No.
or any major alterations. We won't be changing the teaching concept over at the junior high.
No, that's still
That will
team
stay.
teaching for next year.
Will
The
be
differentiated teaching, right. It'll be in
Well,
teams.
Now, that was implemented this past year at 7th and 8th. We were sort of, some board members certainly disagreed with the elimination of honors. But I didn't believe that was at 9th grade this year.
What was it?
The teaming wasn't at 9th
Teaming,
grade?
no, teaming is still block scheduling at the 9th grade and would be for next year.
It still will be. Okay, you just, when you said
Right.
9th grade that they'll be going to teaming, I'm like, whoops. Okay, thank you.
Okay, Mr. Allen?
Yes, Donna, concerning the district budget for this year, does that reflect an increase in the total budget or just an increase in our contribution towards the overall budget?
It reflects both.
Okay. Can you tell us what our contribution was last year?
Our contribution last year was, I believe it was $77,000, something like that. It may have been more.
You need to speak up.
77.
77, yeah, I thought so.
Plus 28.
No, so 770.
I sworn it was 28.
What did you say?
He moved off of 28, so 77.
Thank you. I'm done.
Mr. Weiss?
Just to say, I'd like to make a comment that the proposal to the National Science Foundation for the leadership training program is an exciting thing to me. I know that the Merck Institute has been committed to training teachers all along, as we've done through our in-service programs, and that they've also worked, I think, at the collegiate level to try to change the way that potential teachers are taught, and it's nice to see that this program, I hope it comes about with the grant. The other question I had for you is, do you now have access to the internet, not just for the future of this society, but also for some of the other programs and the curriculum and planning that some of the colleges have now up on the internet? For those of us that surf those kinds of things.
Yeah, it's hard for me to answer that question. Actually, the internet connection that I have is through the IU. The account is through the IU, and that connection was just made yesterday.
Okay.
So we haven't even attempted to.
But you will have
do it
access
yet.
through the IU?
Yes.
Okay. And Judy, the only thing I wanted to let you know is that I support your research into an alternative education program within the district.
Thank you.
Thank
I'd really
you.
like to see that happen.
Mrs. Michael, can I add something quickly in terms of what Donna said about the 50 people? That is a program where we have had 50 people volunteer to participate 3 weeks each of the next 3 summers, as well as dedicate 7 full days out of the teaching year next year and for the following 2 years. I think that would be an ordinary thing to have happen under usual circumstances. I think it's absolutely extraordinary to happen with the way things have been going this year, and I think it really reflects on the quality of the people that see the needs that we have here for youngsters and are willing to participate in that. I'm really proud of the fact that we got that many people to participate.
I'd be interested in having a list of the names as a board member, the 50 volunteers. I'd like to know exactly who they are. And if other board members would wish that list, they send it around. But I'd like to know who they are.
I'd be happy to provide that for the board.
And I think it's that kind of enthusiasm that will help us reach the goal that when we started with this, that perhaps of all the schools that are participating with MISE, that we would become the model for science education.
Okay, questions around Mr. Redcamp?
I had a question. For alternative education, who's the provider of the transportation?
Well, if you take a look at that page 12, it's sort of a mixed bag. Lakeside's currently providing the transportation for us, yes. If you look down at Community Services Foundation, they are local, and we only have a few students there. We transport them on our bus runs. You'll notice for Simmons School, I have rider listed. I spoke with John Cotran, and he did not have the actual cost for me for that, but that's a rider route for those students. That's located right in Horsham, right off of Horsham Road. So it really is a combination.
Okay, is there, two questions. Is there a reason that we don't use rider for some of the others, like Lakeside A and B? Does that cost include, I know some of those kids come back to the VOTAC perhaps, yes? Does it also include that transportation?
It does include that. Lakeside has traditionally done their own transportation, and every year we talk about it, but some of those children, if we've done transportation on regular routes for them, we've had problems because they're interacting with some of the same children that they got in trouble with to begin with. So it's worked out well for us. I mean, it's certainly something we could look into to see if it would be a little less money, but.
I guess if we have, is a student usually placed full-time at Lakeside?
Yes.
Or coming back or coming back to the VOTAC if that's appropriate?
Yes, but generally they're full-time at Lakeside.
Okay. If that's the case, how much different is that, I guess my question, than any other rider route, which is a non-district school inside or outside?
I would have to get you that information, Ralph. I can provide
In
that
other words,
for you.
in that case, they wouldn't be, I believe, in with the other students. And we might be able to get some significant savings, because I think the rider costs are significantly less than.
Well, in working with Mr. Forsythe in the past and with Mr. Cotran, we have always done it as cheaply as possible, but really in the best interest of those children. So I feel comfortable with this, but I can get additional information for you.
If you would, please.
Yeah.
Ralph, I think that we reported on that last night when Mr. Cotran was here, and he had indicated that that is an area that he's taking a long, hard look at, because we've got so many youngsters going there. That's a fairly sizable cost to transport those kids.
Exactly, and I understand in earlier years, when we were providing the transportation and we were assembling them and they were gonna be on the bus with other kids, very valid point, but now that we're talking about go direct, I think we ought to relook at it.
Okay, no problem.
That's
Mrs. Bukowski.
2000.
I'll come back around. Okay. Mrs. Bukowski.
Judy, on the alternative ed in-house, I agree with you on that I think that is a good route to look at. And for Mrs. Brown, or Dr. Brown? Mrs. Brown. I don't recall Dr. Elko mentioning the cost to the district as significant as it appears tonight. I know he talked about how much Merck would give, and don't get me wrong, you know where I stand on this. You know that I'm for it. I think it's great. Last week my kid came home with a circuit breaker on his shoebox or something. It was cute. But I just don't recall this cost, and I would like to know what the significance of the projected cost on the whole thing is. Is it a 50-50 thing? Is it, in the long run?
Okay, the original proposals from all the districts, including us, were roughly a 1/3, 2/3 split, with Merck providing 2/3 of the cost. And it was considered that after we all got our feet wet, the district contributions would rise accordingly, closer to a 50-50 level, so that it became a true partnership.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Clements.
I just have a question for Dr. Clark. On the IEP development versus curriculum development, do the IEP projects change each year? Is that why they
You know what a lot of that is, Tom? That's the work that we do in the summer. The problem with special education is it doesn't stop in June. When we have students register in the summer, we're still under the timelines for the state, which is 45 days turnaround.
Okay.
So we have teachers that we bring in the summer that will actually do the work with the parents.
Okay.
And that's basically what that is. Also, each year we take a look at the format because the state has been wonderful. They've changed the format. In the 3 years we've been doing it, they've changed it 3 times.
3 times, that's
So
right, okay.
we always have to pull a committee together and redo what we already did before.
Okay. Another question for Dr. Fike. Let's see, which page? On the actual projected increase in students. Just for clarification for the community, where are we right now? Are we right around 12,060? Do we know what our number is? Is that a fair number? It's pretty close?
It's either 1268 or 12071, but one of those two.
Okay, it's somewhere right around. That's all.
Okay, Mrs. Sher, last comment. We're about a few minutes to 10.
The busing that Ralph was referencing, this is per diem per student.
Per student.
So it's about 2,070 for the lakeside transportation
Right,
per student.
Mhm.
Yeah, we do have about, what was it, 24 slots?
We
Did
had
buy
22 slots this year, and then we also send out to several other schools. We used Simmons, we used New Life, we had one
Right.
student placed there. Next year, we're looking to convert all of those slots to Lakeside.
Okay, now you're showing 78 students involved in alternative ed.
Right.
But those 78, are those 78 that are there for at least a certain amount of time? That are committed more than a week or so?
Oh, yeah, it's
So-
it's an in and out process.
I know
It changes
that.
during the year, but most of them stay there on the average of at least 6 months.
That's what I
if
wanted to
not
know,
a
what
little
your
bit
average,
longer.
I wanted to know what your average span is for those. so
And
that
some
we know.
have stayed there for several years, and it all depends what's appropriate for that particular student.
But generally, they are lengthy stays.
Yes, they are. They're not, it's not a short-term 1 month in and out.
Okay,
Okay,
tomorrow.
thank you very much.
Thank you, Mrs. Sher. Tomorrow night, Dr. Feig, I'm going to be asking questions about the honors program and the team teaching in the 7th and 8th. Mrs. Clark, I'm going to be I'm going to plug and push for you to do something about the alternative placements for this upcoming budget and not the future. Something that we could do immediately, and I think that could be worked on. And Mrs. Brown, I'm going to challenge you in the area of science fairs and our participation as a school district in outside science fairs. And so I'm going to hold my questions, and I guess you guys are on deck tomorrow night first.
I don't,
Mrs. Brown
you
probably won't be
committed
here.
tomorrow,
Donna, why don't you discuss
Oh.
that? Just take it.
Just in a nutshell, I don't feel that our school district, as large as it is, 2,200 students in the high school, participates at a level that they should in the area of science fairs, local and otherwise. We had this fantastic fellow that's going to be going to Canada. We're all proud of him, but 2,200 students and one student going to Canada in a science fair, there's something the matter with this picture. When I read in the paper, Lansdale Catholic took 12 first place here and this there, and where are our kids? So I say that to you not in criticism, but to challenge you that we should be more visible, more proactive in science fairs, winning, taking places like we do with our band and every other competitive sport. We need to view science as most competitive, and for the money we receive from Merck and for the numbers that we hold at the high schools, we just should be present at all fairs.
I agree with you, and our middle school teachers have taken steps to present a lot more information about science fair participation at the end of this year so that kids can start on their projects in the summer.
As one woman to another, I'd encourage you to crack the whip. Make them jump. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, the budget process isn't one that necessarily needs spontaneity. It's a long process. We're going to plod along, so please write down your questions, bring them back. Dr. Fike, Mrs. Clark will be on deck tomorrow night, and regardless whether I'm here or President Bowman, we'll start at that point and move on. And tomorrow night, I believe, is the earned income tax discussion. So, okay, we adjourn. And there's an executive session immediately after this meeting.